we know exactly. In fact, it's still called Mount Nebo.
Huh. Yep.
So,
Well, it's just like
Mount Sinai, nobody knows. But we know exactly where Mount Nebo is. We know exactly. In fact, it's still.
But but the other thing, Dr. Mike, too, is like when you did the like say the presentation about the 10 plagues, it's like, people look at these things like they're fairy tales, but they weren't just made up. I mean, it's like, scientifically, you know what I'm saying? Like you could see the basis where it all came from, right? They didn't just make up that the water turned to blood or
Right.
something happened to the water. Like you say, you explain it scientifically. Back then they didn't know that, right?
Mike, what Gary's talking about is that I gave a presentation that I actually got from the, actually from YouTube, from Mysteries of Science. Actually, it was from Simha Jakabovich. I think that's how he pronounces his last name. Mm-hmm. Is a scientific way of explaining all of the 10 plagues, including the slaying of the firstborn.
Wow.
Doctor. Oh, I love that story. Like how they had to sleep lower so that that's incredible. I know. Dr. Ed.
Wow.
How are you?
Oh, yeah.
I know that you always, you're a busy guy, but I appreciate how you really struggle to get into the depths of underground.
As you know, I was a busy guy today.
Yep. But we're subversive, we're
yes, you are.
Underground.
Yes.
Underground, baby.
Well, good to see you, Dr. Ed. I haven't seen you, feels like a month or so. Wow.
Things have been just crazy. Just crazy. It is what it is, Life gets in the way of what you'd like to do.
Yep.
God bless. Yep. Who wants to start tonight?
Wait a second. Am I gonna see you tomorrow night, Michael Bodo?
Tomorrow night. Oh, Kol Nidre. Oh my. I didn't sign up for it. Do I need to sign up and get a ticket?
I got you covered.
Wow. You're the best. Then you're gonna see me. What can I do?
But remember, you gotta get there early.
Early. What time's early?
By 7.
By 7, you got to be there early by 7 to sign in. So like 10 minutes of 7, I need, it wants to start, but you got to sign in, and I got you signed in. I'll cover you.
Oh, you're the best. What is it at the high school?
It's at the high school, and my sister-in-law is playing, and she's playing the complete this year, not just the piece, the complete.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Right. Even a piece is great.
I gotta go. I got this. I'm putting up. I'm reaching in and getting my calendar right now. I'm putting it right down there. Kol Nidre.
I mean, it's just to see. And then if you go on Saturday, I don't know. I'm at Saturday. The following day, my brother is speaking.
Next, this coming or next?
No, not this coming, on Yom Kippur
on Wednesday.
Afternoon. Wednesday, he's speaking. I know you're going to be at work.
Wednesday afternoon. Oh yeah. I didn't
it's like right after the service, right?
Right. He'll be doing. I said to him, "Why do you going to do the Torah?" As you know, Bill Gordon's nephew died, and he's in New York. See, so last minute he got Phil, and I said, "Phil, do something on Ukraine." So he's doing a hybrid. He's the Pasha, the Torah portion of the week talks about righteousness, and he's going to talk about how righteousness could have stopped the atrocities in the Ukraine.
Yeah, I'm going to stick around. I'm going to go after that. I'm going to go home and watch the rest on Stream Spot, but I want to stick around for that.
I think,
but he won't speak too long, probably. But I just want to have time to get home by 3.
Oh, you'll leave when you have to leave. What usually happens is he'll schedule a short period of time, and people won't let him go.
Oh, I know.
He spoke about.
Mike, you remember the Saturday service that we did at the temple?
In
March or whatever.
Yep.
When we had the immigrant Shabbat.
Yep.
And Phil was talking about the Ukraine and everything.
Yeah. That's when
It
it's
was
just starting.
great. It
Yeah.
was fabulous. We could,
Yeah.
but we got to get Putin in front of him though in the docket. You know.
Well,
Hey,
you know what's
yes.
going on. Philip is now one of the advisors to the Supreme Court of the Ukraine. So he's working with them
Wow.
regularly about
Wow.
how to handle the war crimes
Yeah.
when this war ends. There are going to be a lot of war crimes tribunals, and
Yeah.
he really wants to be involved in that.
Starting with Vladimir.
Well, first we got to stop the war.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what he's got to
All
do.
we
Stuff.
are saying is give peace a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh yeah, Ruthie won't be here tonight, so the reading is all up to
I think that Dr. Ed looks ready.
I'm ready if you'd like. Well, do you want me to do the Torah portion or the half Torah portion or the quarter Torah portion? I don't.
you do an eighth or a 16th.
Uh,
How do we break it up?
you know,
Well, let's look in the Talmud and see how the great rabbi said we should break up with the Torah Pasha. Do you
whatever
want
you
me to
want.
read the? Do you want me to read the Haftarah and
Why don't
then
you do the
Doctor?
half Torah and I'll do the Torah?
Nice.
Sounds good.
All
Sounds
right.
good. All right, here we go. Okay. When the Eternal saved him from the grasp of his enemies, and especially from the grasp of King Saul, David sang this song to the Eternal. He sang, "The Eternal is my rock, my fortress, my refuge. God is my rock where I seek shelter, my shield, the source of my salvation, my deliverer. You save me from violence. Derided, I cry out to God and am saved from my foes. The waves of death surrounded me. Destruction's floods frightened me. The bonds of Sheol closed in on me. Death's net entrapped me. In my torment, oh, there comes Monique. I called to the Eternal. I called to my God. Oh, excuse me, I had a hiccup. In your temple, you heard me. My scream was in your ears. The earth trembled and shuddered. Thy sky's foundations shook. Your wrath made them shudder. Smoke poured from your nostrils, a devouring fire from your mouth. Blazing coals flamed forth from you. You spread out the sky and came down with a thick cloud beneath your feet. You saddled the cherub and flew. You swooped on the wings of the wind. You tented yourself around with darkness, with rain clouds your pavilion. Glowing coals flared forth from your brilliance. The Eternal thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High made itself heard. You launched arrows and scattered them. Your lightning confounded them. The sea's channels could be seen. Earth's foundations were revealed. By your great roar, Eternal One, by the blast of your nostrils, you reached down from above and took me, pulling me out of deep waters. You saved me from my powerful foe, from enemies too strong for me. They advanced on me in my time of calamity, but the Eternal was my support. You brought me out from trouble to the wide open space because you cherished me. You rescued me. You treated me as I deserved. You rewarded me for my innocence. I have kept the ways of the Eternal. I have not turned wickedly from my God. Your rules of justice are before me. I have not turned away from your laws. I have been blameless toward you. I have kept guard against offense, and you treated me as I deserved, according to my purity in your sight. You show yourself faithful to the faithful. With the truly upright, you show yourself upright. To the pure, you are pure, and with the crooked, you are cunning. You give victory to the humble, and you look at the proud to humble them. Eternal One, you are my lamp. Eternal One, you make my darkness light. With you, I can run through a wall. With my God, I can leap over a barrier. God, your way is perfect. Eternal One, your word is clear. You are a shield to all who look to you for shelter. Who is God beside the Eternal? Who is a rock other than our God? The God who is my mighty shelter, who maps out for me a noble path. who has made my legs like a deer's, who makes me stand on the heights, who trains my hands for battle, my arms to bend a bow of bronze. You have bestowed upon me your triumphant shield. Your response to me enlarges my strength. You lengthen my stride, and my ankles do not waver. I chase my foes and destroy them. I do not turn back till they are no more. I destroy them, I shatter them. They cannot get up, they lie at my feet. You have girded me with strength for battle and laid low my foes beneath me. You make my enemies bare their necks. I rid myself of those who hate me. They cry for help, but there is none. They cry to the Eternal, but get no answer. Then I pound them like the dust of the earth, like mud in the streets. I trample and pulverize them. You have saved me from strife with peoples. You have preserved me to be the leader of nations, so that a people I never knew now serves me. Foreigners shall cringe before me, obey me as soon as they hear me. Foreigners fade away, they come quaking from their strongholds. The Eternal lives, praise be my rock. God is exalted, the rock of my salvation, the God who gives me revenge, who makes people subject to me, who frees me from my foes, who raises me above my enemies, who rescues me from the violent. So I thank you, Eternal One, among the nations, and sing praises to your name. You are a tower of victory to your king. You show love for your anointed, to David and his descendants forever. Amen.
Woo!
Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord.
Fire and brimstone. Wow.
No, but it's like, it's really positive though. Just like, well, I mean, like last week, right? It was very positive. Like, it's like all this good stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of,
Except when you pulverize people under your feet.
See, to me, good stuff is when fire and brimstone happens to the other people. Not to me. I don't want to be involved in the fire and brimstone. I just want to see it take place where appropriate.
All right, I have a question for you guys, and I'm pretty sure that Dr. Ed knows the answer.
Yeah.
Brimstone is an old English word that we don't use anymore. So what word do we use for brimstone now?
I think Dr. Ed told us this one.
I'm not going to tell you.
I think it was flint, right? The rock?
No. Sulfur.
Sulfur.
Fire and
I
sulfur.
learned anything. I got to learn that now. I got to remember.
What a stink, huh? Whew.
And it burns, right? Yeah, it's the rock that burns. That's why it was flint.
Wow. Well, that sounds
okay,
good,
and now
still.
why does David keep calling God his rock?
God is our rock.
Yeah.
In the poetic, Yeah.
Because a rock reminds us of something eternal.
Yes.
Very strong. So that's why he keeps calling it the rock.
There we go.
Like a Chevy truck, like the Bob Seger sang about, right? Oh, okay.
Like a rock.
Oh, God. Yeah, wait a second. Oh, God. Okay.
So this is the second to last Torah portion for
Yep. The next
cycle.
one is V'zot HaBracha, and that is it.
Wow.
Yep.
The end.
Never the end, Achi. Just the end of the cycle.
Yes. All right. So last week, Monique said, "Oh yeah, when is Moses gonna say the poem or what was it, a song, right?" So
that's right. There you go, Monique. Here you go.
Okay, I can read.
All right. So Dr. Ed will also read tonight too. So that's
okay. Monique can read.
Yeah, Monique, why don't you go for it?
Give ear, O heavens, let me speak. Let the earth hear the words I utter. May my discourse come down as the rain, my speech distill as the dew, like showers on young growth, like droplets on the grass. For the name of the Eternal I proclaim, give glory to our God. The rock whose deeds are perfect, yea, all God's ways are just, a faithful God, never false, true and upright indeed. Unworthy children, that crooked, perverse generation, their baseness has played God's false. Do you thus requite the eternal, O dull and witless people? Is not this the Father who created you, fashioned you, and made you endure? Remember the days of old, consider the years of age past. Ask your parents who will inform you, your elders who will tell you, when the Most High gave nations their homes and set the divisions of humanity, God fixed the boundaries of peoples in relation to Israel's numbers. For the eternal portion is his people, Jacob, God's own allotment. God found them in a desert region, in an empty, howling waste. God girded them, watched over them, guarded them as the pupil of God's eye, like an eagle who roused its nestlings, gliding down to its young. So did God spread wings and take them, bear them along on pinions. The Eternal alone did guide them, no alien God alongside. God set them atop the highlands to feast on the day of the earth, nourishing them with honey from the crag and oil from the flinty rock, curd of kine and milk of flocks with the best of lambs, and rams of Bashan and he-goats with the very finest wheat, and foaming grape blood was your drink. So Jeshurun grew fat and kicked, you grew fat and gross and coarse. They forsook the God who made them and spurned the rock of their support. They incensed God with alien things, vexed God with abominations. They sacrificed to demons, no gods, gods they had never known, new ones who came but lately, who stirred not your forebears' fears. You neglected the rock who begot you, forgot the rock, the God who labored to bring you forth. The Eternal saw and was vexed, and spurned those sons and daughters. God said, I will hide my countenance from them and see how they fare in the end, for they are a treacherous breed, children with no loyalty in them. They incense me with no gods, vex me with their futilities. I'll incense them with a no folk, vex them with a nation of fools. For a fire has flared in my wrath and burned to the bottom of Sheol, has consumed the earth and its increase, eaten down to the base of the hills. I will sweep misfortunes on them, use up my arrows on them, wasting famine, ravaging plague, deadly pestilence, and fanged beasts. Will I let loose among them with venomous creepers and dust? The sword shall deal death without, as shall the terror within. To youth and maiden alike, the suckling as well as the aged. I might have reduced them to naught, may their memory cease among humankind. But for fear of the taunts of the foe, their enemies who might misjudge. I think I'm going to stop here.
Yeah, we got some good fire and brimstone.
Oh my gosh.
going here.
It's incredible. I mean,
I can smell the sulfur, man. I can smell it.
And to me, it's like, this is such great history. It's like the best of the best. It's like they don't give in at all. Like, you were about to leave God. You were sacrificing to demons, to everything else. I mean, I'm always, that's the biggest thing that blows my mind about the Bible, the Torah, and the prophets and everything, is they brought out, they put all the worst stuff right out there. They didn't hide anything. Everything was truth. Truth. Moses, yes, he killed a man. Okay, truth. And everything about it. Yes, God was going to kill you, but because of your enemies, he couldn't kill you when he wanted to. It's like, oh my gosh. I mean, everyone's scared about this idea of, what is it called? Critical race theory. I feel like this is the original critical race theory. You people are useless, but I love you.
I always like the part about, like, when you get, you'll eat until you're, and then you'll forget that, you're God. You'll think that it is you that,
oh my God.
Yeah.
Right. Everything about it is so vital. It's so vital. We would never, even as a nation, the United States would never write a book like this as part of its history. They would they would cover over the part about Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. Oh, yeah, there was that thing. And then something else. And the war in Vietnam, it wasn't that bad. It was bad. All right, I'm sorry. I got on my high horse.
Wilbur.
Dr. Ed, you want to take the
I got to be thinking, this year we did half Torahs, and every one of the half Torahs were positive, even during a Pasha that was very negative. And again, I've been thinking about this. Almost every single half Torah is positive. And remember, they read the half Torah when they couldn't read the Torah because it was outlawed. So they did something positive, even though this is a pretty negative situation. The vine for them is from Sodom and the vineyards of Gomorrah.
Oh
The
my
grapes for
God.
them are poison, a bitter growth, their clusters. Their wine is the venom of asps, the pitless poison of vipers. And then the Torah, but the half Torah version is, isn't God wonderful? Oh my God, where are we? I forgot. Where did we leave off? Number?
Right on the
It's on,
top.
it's on top where it says and say.
Okay. And say, our own hand has prevailed. None of this was wrought
There
by
you go,
the church.
Achi.
For
Yeah.
they are the folk void of sense, lacking in all discernment. Were they wise, they would think upon this, gain insight into their future. How could one have routed 1,000 or to put 10,000 to fight unless their rock had sold them? The eternal had given them up, for the rock is not like our rock in our enemy's own estimation. The vine for them is from Sodom, from the vineyards of Gomorrah. The grapes for them are poison, a bitter growth their clusters. Their wine is the venom of asps, the pitless poison of vipers. Lo, I have it all put away, sealed up in my storehouses, to be my vengeance and my recompense at the time their foot falters. Yea, their day of disaster is near, and destiny rushes upon them. For the eternal will vindicate God's people and take revenge for God's servants upon seeing that their might is gone and neither born nor free is left. God will say, where are their gods? The rock in whom they sought refuge, who ate the fat of their offerings, who and drank their libation wine. Let them rise up to your help, and let them be a shield unto you. See then that I am the one. There is no God beside me. I deal death and give life. I wounded and I will heal, nor can deliver my hand. Lo, I raise my hand to heaven and say, as I live forever, when I whet my flashing blade and my hand lays a hold upon judgment, vengeance I wreak on my foes. Will I deal to those who reject me? I will make arrows drunk with blood as my sword devours them. Blood of the slain and the captive and the long-haired enemy chiefs. O nation, acclaim God's people, for he'll avenge the blood of his servants, wreak vengeance on his foes, and cleanse his people's land. Moses came together with Hosea, son of Nun, and recited all the words of this poem in the hearing of the people. And when Moses finished reciting all these words to Israel, he said to them, take to heart all the words which I have warned you this day, and join them upon your children, that they may observe faithful all these terms of teaching. For this is not a trifling thing for you. It is your very life, though it shall long endure on the land that you possess upon crossing the Jordan. Wow. That very day, the Eternal spoke to Moses, ascend these heights of Abarium to Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab facing Jericho, and view the land of Canaan, which I am giving the Israelites as their holding. You shall die on the mountain that you are about to ascend. and shall be gathered to your kin as your brother Aaron died in Mount Hor and was gathered to his kin. For you both broke faith with me among the Israelite people at the waters of Meribah-Akash in the wilderness of Zin, by failing to hold my sanctity among the Israelite people. You may view the land from a distance, but you shall not enter it. The land I giving to the Israelite people.
Makes me think of Martin Luther King.
Well,
there you go.
yeah, you can look, but you can't taste. I mean, this
Yep.
is, I mean, this is the people. This is the sentence that has drawn people into argument forever. Why didn't he let him in? And I think, and shall beget. Did I? Yeah, we finished right here.
Yeah.
So I got to tell you, this has been the biggest discussion of any part of the Torah. You're going up there and you can look in, and you did everything I told you to, and you rallied these people, and you walked them through the Red Sea, and you killed the guy. You did everything I asked you to do, and you know what? You still can't go in.
But that was the one thing he didn't do, though, is talk to the rock the way God wanted. And for Aaron, he didn't get to go in because even, he first of all was like the ringleader of the golden calf. And then from what I've heard, the other reason also, another thing was when Aaron did hit the rock, he hit it twice. Aaron didn't stop him after the first time. So that was why, like, Aaron couldn't go in.
Yeah, but Gary, these are so minor things.
I know.
You're trying to save the people of Israel, and you hit the rock once instead of twice, or whatever you've done. And he says, once you screwed with me, and that's it.
Well, also, Moses, because he was a leader, was held to a higher standard. When you're held to a higher standard, you can't get away with as much that somebody that would be in a lower position.
Yeah, I get
but
it.
I look at it both ways, though. I look at it like it was something major important to God, I think. But also, it could have been just the opposite. It's just like you say, it could just be a little thing that God said, well, I need to get, he's not going to be the leader in there. I got to have a good excuse. So I'm just going to tell him, all right, he didn't listen to me. All right, that's it. You're not going in.
You're screwed.
I look at it both ways, actually. Like, you know what I mean? You could look at it either way.
Yeah.
But I do think that to God, I think it was significant because Moses acted angry at the people for something that was legitimate. They were worried about water. That wasn't just fetching. And then and then God tells him to talk to the stone to sanctify me before the people. And instead, Moses angrily hits the rock and he says, okay, ye rebels, shall we get some water for meaning like he's doing it. Mm-hmm. So it's like instead of sanctifying God, it's almost like Moses was sanctifying himself. Mm-hmm. That's just the way I see it. But the other side, like I say, you can look at it in terms of a tiny little, when you think about what Moses did. Right. This little tiny little thing, and he's out.
Okay, so Gary, let me challenge you a little bit in here.
Yep.
Okay, you said something that I think is very important, and that is that God was holding Moses to a higher standard.
Right.
And because of that, he committed an infraction, and as a result of that, the punishment was huge. Right. Well, if that is the case, then nobody wants to be a leader because you can do 99 spectacular things, but all you have to do is make one little teeny mistake and you're zapped.
Like marriage.
Right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
See,
God forgives. Your wife doesn't.
Yeah, but see, even in marriage, see if you're not like held to a higher standard, like somebody could just say, oh well, he's But if like you're a president or you're a some dignitary or a monarch or something like that, or even if you're just like a famous celebrity, or people have a certain view of you, like when Jimmy Swaggart,
Whoa.
when you're supposed to be, remember that?
Oh God.
I have sinned. Then
Oh.
again, he was Jerry Lee Lewis's cousin, but
Yeah, he can
I
play a mean
understand.
piano still to this day. He plays it
oh man,
unbelievable.
love
I'm
Jerry
always
Lee.
of the theory that there's multiple reasons, and I heard one the other day from this Rabbi Foreman, who does these awesome like Torah. He does these animated features. I think I might have shared one or two, but he said he actually brought it to the Yitro. Remember Jethro, the father-in-law, where
Yep.
That's
Jethro
true. Yeah.
says to make captains out of people so that you don't get worn out. And Rabbi Foreman, and I never heard this before, but he said that that was the point where Moses let down the people. It was some word. He used these Hebrew words. He said he let down the people. And so when he did that, he let down God in essence. So I don't know. I thought it was interesting because it's another concept,
You just pointed out something incredible, Aki. I swear, this is a eureka. I never thought about this, but you just talked about the whole. When we talk about how Yitro kind of devised, like you say, the system of delegation,
Right.
and it's a great system. But when you look in the Torah, it wasn't God giving Moses the order to do this. It was just his father-in-law saying, "Wow, what God's asking you to do is too difficult, man. You're gonna burn yourself out. You gotta take it easy, and you gotta share your." Like God didn't ask the other people to do the task; He asked Moses to do it.
Wow.
That's interesting. The thought, though, the fact that wasn't God, that wasn't set up like that wasn't God's saying to Moses, "This is to do." It's just his father-in-law's advice.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you, I
wild.
think we're going to be discussing this thing for the next 3,500 years.
That's right. That is exactly right.
I'm gonna send you that video then, or maybe I could just play it.
But I
Oh,
also
if you
think
have
I
it, go
also
ahead.
think too. Oh,
Uh,
sorry. I was gonna say I also think though, but
picture.
aside from anything
So,
that
so,
Moses did,
so Michael, he puts these things out on YouTube.
Yeah, it's called Aleph Bet. Aleph Bet.
I'll bet.
Yeah, it's a whole. It's kind of something I've subscribed to. Um, I've shared them before. They're really, some of them are amazing. Like the one about the crying over the temple, Tisha B'av. He did like an hour about that, and it's amazing.
Oh, Tisha B'Av.
Yeah, Tisha B'av.
I think that I think that the fact that it was time for a new leader, that no matter what Moses did, even if he hadn't done that, I think like God used that as like an excuse. Just a simple excuse. Okay, you didn't listen to me, that's it. Whoop, you don't go in. Okay, so now I can get a new leader and then not let him in.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, Moses was 120 years old, it says.
But that blows my mind now, thinking about Yitro. I'm not going to stop thinking about that now. That's so
You
incredible.
want to watch
Never,
if I can find it? You want to, I don't know
it's
if I can
so
find it.
weird. It's so
It's
incredible.
amazing.
We
It's
always
absolutely,
talk about it, but it's not like God said that, you need to do this because I don't think you can, you know,
yeah,
Moses did it, but it wasn't that God gave him the orders to delegate. It was just a suggestion. And even then, his father-in-law had no authority to make him do it. He just
Right,
said, "Oh,
but
this is what you should do."
I think that we can come up with many different things, but the one
Yeah.
place in the Bible which you can actually see in 51, God says, "For you broke faith with me." Okay, I'm God, it's me. For you broke faith with me among the Israelite people. So everybody saw you at the waters in the wilderness of Zin by failing to uphold my sanctity. In other words, that you took my place among the Israelite people. So this is actually written in the Bible.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And then Moses made it seem like just him and Aaron like striking the rock is where the water's coming from. Whereas God specifically wanted him in front of all these people to show that it was God that was like bringing it forth.
So that
And in a
I think
sense that I think that's a big thing in a sense. In a biblical sense, it's a big deal. I think so.
Right.
okay, but all we're saying, I think, is that it seems disproportionate.
Yeah, oh definitely.
It
I don't
seems
argue with that.
disproportionate.
Compared to all the things that Moses did, even if he did do some, one little terrible,
Right.
but you know,
You know, I guess the big dichotomy, the big issue here is God is straight with Moses for his whole life, and Moses is straight with God. All and then at the end, God doesn't say, "Hey, I'm not letting you in because we need some new leadership here. These people you brought these people to as far as you can go. It's time for you to die." He doesn't say that to him, and it bothers the hell out of me. I would have liked to see what would have happened if Moses says, "I'm going in, strike me down." Think about that. He says, "I'm going in, strike me down in front of all these people."
Yeah.
That would have really changed,
interesting.
the
That's
movie.
interesting.
That would have really changed the movie. The ending would have been more spectacular. Nothing like the end of The Godfather.
So, Michael, were you able to find it?
There's so many. I mean,
Oh,
I mean, there's like an 11-minute video that's part one. I mean, maybe we can. I don't know if you're interested. You want me to share my screen here? Hold on. Okay. I mean, people can drop out if they don't want to listen to it because I know it's 8 o'clock.
It's only 8 o'clock.
It's only 8 o'clock.
Like, I haven't gone to bed before midnight since I was 3 years old.
hey, Ed, what's your problem? It's past my bedtime.
That's your bedtime. I get into bed at 11:30 and I still have to read at least 3 chapters or something.
Wow. All right. This is Aleph Beta. This is Rabbi Foreman. Hold on one second. Did I share right? Can you hear it if I play it?
No, we can see it.
Aleph Beta. Why can't Moses enter the land? Well, the book of Numbers tells us why, doesn't it?
Can you hear it?
Moses hit the
Yeah.
rock when he was supposed to speak to the rock, and for that apparently trivial misdeed, for some reason Moses can't go into the land. That at least is a story that Parshat Chukat, back in the book.
Lost you.
Yep.
Oh, is that?
Because
Hold on.
this week's Parsha, Moshe goes back.
Hold on. I'm not sharing it properly. Wait a second. Share screen, and it says share sound. Okay, hold on. Optimize for video. That's better. All right, hold on. Let me go back. All right, can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Real misdeed, for some reason Moses can't
Better?
go into the land.
That's
And that
good.
at least is a story that Parshat Chukat, back in the book of Numbers, seems to tell. But there's a little tiny problem with this, and it crops up in this week's Parsha, because in this week's Parsha, Moshe goes back to the question of why he can't enter the land. And if you read closely, he seems to give an answer that doesn't seem to have anything to do with the rock at all. Gam bi hit'anaf Hashem biglalchem. Moses says to the people, and God became angry at me because of you, Lamor, saying, Gam ata lo tavo shama, you too shall not go into the land. Well, just stop there for a minute. What is this business? And God became angry at me because of you, on your account? If Moses hit the rock, doesn't it strike you as kind of sour grapes to blame the people for that? The people didn't hit the rock. Moses hit the rock. Yes, the people were complaining, and Moses was angry at them and called them rebels, but it's hard to make the case that makes it their fault. He decided to hit the rock. Now, if it were the only time that Moshe talked like this, maybe it's an anomaly, but it's not actually the only time. He says it again in next week's Parsha. Vayit'aber Hashem bi'lamanchem, and God became angry at me because of you. V'lo shama elai, and didn't listen to me. Why is it their fault? I mean, again, he's the one who hit it. Now, I'd like to suggest a theory to you. I'm going to need 2 weeks to take you through this theory, so this is going to be our Parsha video through this week and next week, the 2 weeks where Moses seems to cast his inability to go into the land in the terms that I've described to you. It's the people's fault. Let's jump right in. So here's the thing. Rashi and a couple other classical commentators reads the text as I've just read it to you. Then Moshe here in Deuteronomy is obliquely referring to the sin of striking the rock, which was described back in Numbers as the reason why he can't enter the land. But there are other commentators who see it differently, who said Numbers, yeah, that was telling one story, but for some reason in Deuteronomy, there seems to be a different story emerging, a second reason of why Moshe can't go into the land. Let's leave Numbers behind here and just read Deuteronomy on its own terms for a minute and see what seems to emerge. Because actually, if you look at Moses' declaration here in this week's Parsha that I can't go into the land because of you, you see that right before he said that, for the last 15 verses, he was describing the sin of the spies. He was describing how the people had asked for spies and Moshe had gone along with it, and then the people started complaining and didn't have faith in God, and then God became angry and said, none of you can go into the land, you're going to die out for 40 years, and then God became angry at me also because of you. The first word there is gam bi, literally also me God became angry at because of you. Because you guys went after the spies, I didn't. Right? It wasn't really my fault, and that's true, it wasn't really his fault. Moshe was one of the good guys. I mean, Kalev and Yoshua, these were the good spies, and Moshe, along with them, was desperately pleading for the people to have faith in God. He really was one of the good guys. So in a way, these commentators are answering a question. The text seems to flow better according to them, because it would make sense now that, Moses is actually referring to the story of the spies, and that really wasn't his fault. So what he's saying, well, it wasn't my fault, it's kind of true. But then again, it just makes life harder in another way, which is, why should Moshe be held account for something that wasn't his fault? Isn't it kind of mean of God to say, you can't go into the land because of this? Plus, however we understand that, we're still going to figure out how it jives together with the book of Numbers. I mean, there can't be two reasons for the same thing. I mean, which is it? So there's a lot of questions which we need to struggle with, and I'll try to do that with you over the course of these 2 weeks. It turns out, I think, that this week's Parsha answers these questions for us, but it does so in a remarkable and astounding ways. I need to warn you now that my conclusion here over these next 2 weeks is going to come across as counterintuitive. I really wish that other people had seen this before me. Maybe they have. I invite you to go back and look through the earlier commentators. If you have somebody who sketches out this theory, I'll be a very, very happy camper. But in the meantime, I'm just going to lead you in the direction that I think the text is taking you and put the evidence out there and kind of allow you to reach your own conclusions. But here's the evidence as I see it. Sefer Dvarim, as a whole really, begins with a speech that Moses gives when he's standing with the people on the cusp of entering the land of Israel in the 40th year of their sojourn in the desert. One of the questions you have to ask about the speech is, what is its main theme? What is Moses trying to say in this speech? He's not just randomly talking about a bunch of stuff. There's an idea that it all revolves around. What is that idea? You get a clue, a very important clue, I think, from the preamble to the speech. I'm going to read the preamble with you, and as we read it, you'll find that there's a whole bunch of places mentioned to describe where the speech took place. You don't need that many places to triangulate your position, but one of them stands out as different from the rest. You can play one of my favorite Sesame Street games over here. Which one of these things is not like the other? And the thing that is not like the other here is quite instructive. Ela hadvarim asher dibra Moshe al kol Yisrael. These are the words that Moses spoke to all of Israel. Here are the places. Be'evra Yarden, place number 1. Bamidbar, in the desert, place number 2. Ba'arava, in Arava, Mul Suf, opposite Suf, Bein Paran u Bein Tofel, between Paran and Tofel, V'lavan v'chatzerot v'dizahav, Achadasar yom mechorev, 11 days away from Chorev, Derech Har Seir, passing by the way of Har Seir, going towards Kadesh Barnea. Vayehi ba'arbaim shana, it happened in the 40th year, ba'ashtei asar chodesh, be'achad lachodesh, on such and such a date, diber Moshe b'nei Yisrael k'chol asher tziva Hashem oto aleihem. Moses said the following. Okay, that was the preamble. Which place seemed different than all the others? I think the place that seems different is Chorev. Chorev, another word for Mount Sinai. Achad asar yom Chorev. We were 11 days away from Sinai. It's the only place to which a time period is attached. All the other places are described geographically in terms of where they are. Here it's described in terms of when they were. 11 days walk from Chorev. That's where the speech took place. And then another time period. Vayehi ba'arbaim shana, it happened in the 40th year of their sojourn in the desert. Then Moshe gave this speech. Those two time periods tell a story, don't they? Just do the math. When are they right now, when Moses gives this speech? They've been walking through the desert for 40 years, but where are they? They're just 11 days away from Chorev. It was 40 years since they'd been in Chorev. That happened in the very first year of the sojourn in the desert. But they're only 11 days away from where they were 40 years ago, just an 11-day walk. And that is the burning problem that this entire speech revolves around. It's all there to explain, why did it take so long? Why did an 11-day walk take 40 years? If that's the question that Moses is asking in the speech, the answer should be obvious. It was the sin of the spies. That's what sealed their fate. That's what made this whole thing take 40 years when it could have taken 11 days. And indeed, as if to corroborate our theory, Moshe does get to the sin of the spies quite quickly in the speech. He starts to give a very brief rundown of the history. He says, we were in Chorev, and then we left, and then this happened, and then the story of the spies. And he skips over a whole bunch of stuff. He skips the sin of the golden calf, not a word. He skips the sin of Korach, not a word. He skips the whole story of the manna, the whole story of Miriam's well and the water crisis, all of that, not even a word. But he doesn't skip over everything. He dwells on one little episode that seems so trivial, the easily forgotten story of Yitro's judges. Va'omar aleichem beitahi, I told you at that time, lo uchal levadi setetchem, I can't alone carry you. Find yourselves wise men who can help me with this burden of judging the people. You're so many, you're so numerous, I wish you were even more, but I need some help with this. So I suggested to you, how about some of these intermediate judges that could bear the legislative and judicial burden along with me? And that, of course, is the story of Yitro's judges, originally recounted in Parshat Yitro back in the book of Exodus. But this whole thing is an unconscionable digression. He goes into such detail. He describes exactly how he instructed the judges, what it is that he told them, how the people gave him permission to do it when he asked them. I mean, every last little detail with these judges. Why is it here in a story that's really about why it took us 40 years to traverse 11 days, a story that begins at Chorev where it should and ends with the Meraglim, the story of the spies, where it should? What is the story of Yitro's judges doing here to the exclusion of everything else in the 40-year history? That is the great $64,000 question of our Parsha, and in its answer lies a key to the one of the most profound puzzles that the Torah gives us, why Moshe couldn't enter the land. I think the Torah's text is inexorably leading us to a startling, indeed a shocking conclusion. If you want to understand the story of the spies, you cannot understand it without reference to another seemingly entirely disconnected story, the story of Yitro's judges. The two stories are somehow connected. If you want to understand why Moshe couldn't go into the land, the proximate answer to that question is the story of the spies. There was something about the spies that couldn't allow Moshe to go into the land. But if you ask, why was it Moshe's fault? The sin of the spies wasn't Moshe's fault. Then you really need to look a little farther, don't you? Because you can't really understand the story of the spies without another story. Moshe, with the benefit of 40 years hindsight, looking back on why he can't go into the land, points to the story of the spies. Says I was held accountable for that, but also points us even deeper to the story of Yitro's judges. Why are these two stories connected? What explains Moshe's perspective on all of this? We'll come back and explore that when we return next week.
Okay, do you want to wait till next week, or should we jump forward?
Oh man, it's too much suspense. How long is the other one? It's not that long, right?
Yeah, hold on. What did my... let me see. I think it's...
This is Rabbi
14
David Foreman.
minutes.
You are watching.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do
This
it.
is the second part of a series we began last week. If you haven't seen last week's video, please take a look at it now. Last week I left you with a few questions. Let me just review them quickly. Moses, in last week's Parsha as well as in this week's Parsha, seems to blame the people for the fact that he can't go into the land. Gam bi hitanaf Hashem b'glalchem. God became angry at me on your account. Why was it the people's fault? They didn't force him to hit the rock back in the book of Numbers. And we suggested last week that if you take a close look at the book of Deuteronomy, it doesn't seem like the book of Deuteronomy is relating to that sin of hitting the rock at all. It seems to locate the reason why Moshe can't go into the land, seemingly, in the story of the spies. Somehow Moses is held accountable for that, despite the fact that he was a good guy. He, along with Joshua and Caleb, were exhorting the people to have faith in God, and yet somehow Joshua and Caleb, they're allowed to go into the land, but not Moses. Why, of all things, would Moses be held accountable for what happened with the spies? Now, I suggested to you last week that maybe the answer to all of these questions has to do with an apparent digression that Moshe makes in the speech that he makes to the people at the very beginning of Deuteronomy. Right there in that speech, Moshe is explaining to the people why it is that it's taken them 40 years to get to the land, because of the sin of the spies. But right before he talks about the spies, he inserts a digression. He speaks about one other event that happened long ago, an apparently trivial event. The story of Yitro's intermediate judges. It happened all the way back in Parshat Yitro in the book of Exodus. Yitro suggests that Moses would probably do a lot better if he had some help in judging the people. He's standing there from morning until night just judging them and answering all their questions and explaining the laws to them. If there was a system of judges underneath them, Moshe would be much more effective. They could handle the small stuff and Moshe could handle the big stuff. And Moshe accepted this advice and proposed it to the people. And the people accepted this advice. And for some reason, Moses here in Deuteronomy, 40 years later, feels compelled to tell us that whole story in detail right before relating to the people. The disaster of the sin of the spies. The great question is why? Why is that digression included in the speech? Unless it's not a digression. We theorized last week that perhaps you can't understand the sin of the spies without understanding the story of the intermediate judges. In Moses' mind, 40 years later, looking back on everything, those two stories are inextricably linked. Last week, I suggested to you that as just a possible theory, but this week, I'd like to show you what I think is ironclad evidence in the text for that theory. If you read the story of the intermediate judges as Moses relates it here in Deuteronomy, you will find parallel after parallel after parallel to Moses' account of the story of the spies, which he gives right after this. If it were just one connection or two, you might dismiss it as a coincidence, but it's multiple connections. The Torah seems to be interweaving all of the language of the intermediate judges into the story of the spies, indicating that in fact these two stories are intimately connected. Let me show you what I mean here. Let's start at the beginning of the story of the intermediate judges. Moshe says, "There we were at Sinai, and God told us it was time to go into the land. Re'ei natati lifnechem et haaretz. See, I've given you the land. Bo'u reshu et haaretz. Come, take possession of the land." Now stop right there and go to the very beginning of the story of the spies, just a few verses later. Re'ei natan Hashem elokech lefanech et haaretz. See, God has given you the land. Alei reish. Go up and take possession of it. It's like exactly the same thing, but it's not just this first element. It continues being exactly the same. Look at what happens after this in the story of the intermediate judges. Moshe makes a request for some help. He says, "It's hard for me to judge all of you. Could I have some intermediate judges who would help me in this task?" Vatanu oti vatamu tova davar shadibarta la'asot. And you answered me and you said, that's a good idea. Now go to the story of the spies a few verses later. The people make a request of Moses. Do you think, Moses, we could send out some people before us who would help spy out the land for us? Please? And here's Moshe's response. Vayitav beinai hadavar. And it was good in my eyes, the thing that you asked for. We've heard that language before. It was good in my eyes. It's good, the thing you asked for. In each case, a request, and in each case, a response. It's good what it is that you propose. So back to the intermediate judges. So what did Moses do? Ve'ekach et roshei shivtechem. So I took the heads of your tribes. I made them judges. Now to the story of the spies. Ve'ekach mikem shnei masar anashim. And I took from you 12 people, ish echad l'shavet, one from each tribe. One more time, the taking of representatives from tribes. The first time as judges, the second time as spies. Let's keep on reading. Back in the intermediate judges, Moses then instructed the judges. Moses told them, Kakaton kagadol tishmaon. Treat little people just like big people. Give everybody a fair shake before the law. In the story of the spies, why were the people scared? It's because they failed to treat little people like big people. Look at Moses' description. The people said, our hearts are melted. Am gadol v'ram mimenu. They were huge, big people, much taller than us. Arim gadolot b'tzorot b'shamayim. Cities that were big, with walls up to the heaven. And we feel small, and the people are so big. But the people are making an error. Little people are just like big people, according to Moses, but somehow it doesn't ring true for them. Little people are little people, and big people, well, they're big people. Back to the judges right after Moses says little people are just like small people, he says, Lo taguru b'pnei ish, don't be afraid of any people, you judges. Nobody can harm you. Why? Ki hamishpat la'Elokim hu, because God is right behind you. God is the ultimate judge, and he stands behind you. Don't be afraid. And now in the spies, the same theme echoes. And Moses says, and then I told you when you were worried about the big people and you thought you were small people, Lo ta'artzun v'lo tir'u mehem, don't be afraid of them. Why? Hashem Elokechem olech lifnechem, hu yilachem lachem, because God is in front of you. He will war on your behalf. You have nothing to fear. But the people were fearful. And you might ask, why though? Why were the people so fearful? Why in the story of the spies did the people not listen to Moshe's desperate entreaties? So they're big people, who cares? There's God behind you. God's going to be there for you. Why did that desperate plea on the part of Moshe fall on deaf ears? It was so logical. Listen to how Moshe puts it. Lo tir'u mehem, don't be afraid of these huge giants that you see in the land. He says, Hashem Elokechem, the Lord your God, ha'olech lifnechem, that even now is walking before you, hu yilachem lachem, that God is going to battle on your behalf. You know how I know that, Moshe says? Just look at your own experience. Kechol asher asa itchem b'Mitzrayim le'inechem. He's going to do for you just what he did for you in Egypt before your very own eyes. I'm not asking you to trust in something you didn't see. You saw this. B'midbar asher ha'ita, and in this desert that you yourself have seen, asher nasa'ach Hashem Elokecha, that God has carried you through the desert, kasher yisa ish et beno, like a man would carry his child, b'chol haderech asher halachtem, this whole way that you've traveled, ad bo'achem al hamakom hazeh, until you've come to this place. Look at your experience. Your experience shows you can count on God. But somehow in this, you did not have faith in God. It made so much sense and you wouldn't listen. Why didn't they listen? Moshe, in his words here, if you read them carefully, teaches you why. Look at the most emotional part of Moses' appeal to them. God has carried you through this desert like a man carries his child. Why wouldn't you trust a father who steadfastly carried his child? God hasn't faltered. He never put you down. Why would you mistrust him now? And now look at the story of the intermediate judges. See if you can find that theme. The theme of a child being carried. and the theme of being put down because it's too hard to carry you anymore. Look at what Moshe says to the people when he requests the intermediate judges. Lo uchal levadi sa'et etchem. I cannot carry you anymore. Eicha esa levadi tarchachem lasechem v'rivchem. How can I possibly carry all of your burdens anymore? I need the judges. I need some help. I've got to put you down. So in the end, as it turns out, the people had experienced a father of sorts who had put them down when it was too hard to carry them. But that father wasn't God. It was Moses. Moshe hadn't intended it, but he had laid the precedent in the events of the intermediate judges for the sin of the spies. He had been the father who put the child down because it was too hard, and now the child no longer trusts father. Doesn't make a difference, earthly father, father in heaven, I no longer trust father. If I've been put down once, I could be put down again. And Moshe rails and says, how could you not trust them? God has been carrying you this whole time. Don't you see your experience? Yes, that's true, but they had experienced a father who had put them down. If it happened once, it could happen again, and they can't bring themselves to trust God. Not in a million years had Moshe intended to cause this tragedy. He just wanted a little help. It was exhausting. Morning till night he judged the people. But that judgment, in a way, was loving. It was their connection to God. That's how Moshe describes it back in Exodus. The people are coming to me to seek out God. It's not just a matter of judgment. It's a matter of connecting to God. And Moshe would lovingly teach them the laws. And now that connection would be compromised through these intermediates that have no business being there. And then the people would ask for intermediates that have no business being there. Spies that get in the way of the loving connection between the people and God. God was going to lead the people in directly. But now the people say, no, we need these people in between us and God, these spies. Let's just do it the normal way. Any normal country with a military operation would send out scouts and spies. Well, why can't we have those spies? They're recoiling from the direct connection to God. And somehow it all traces back in Moshe's own mind to the story of the intermediate judges. It couldn't have happened without that story. Is Moshe to blame for the story of the spies? Blame would probably be too strong of a word. Moshe was a good guy in that story. He desperately pleads with the people to have faith in God. But when the people fail, and when, because of that failure, an entire generation cannot enter the land, Moshe cannot enter too. As the unwitting facilitator of the sin of the spies, he, along with the people, are subject to its bitter consequences. Why, in the end, can't Moshe go into the land? There's two answers to that question, because there's two reasons why Moshe might have been able to go into the land. He might have been able to go into the land just as an ordinary citizen like anyone else might have. Or he might have been able to go into the land because he was the leader that needed to lead them there. If you look at the book of Numbers, Moshe can't take the people in the land because he hit the rock. But look at the language there. Moshe can't take the people into the land. In the language of the verse, Lachin lo taviu et ha'am, therefore you shall not lead the people into the land. It wasn't a decree against him as a private citizen. He just couldn't be the leader anymore. But that left open a tantalizing question, didn't it? Maybe Moshe couldn't lead the people into the land. But couldn't he just go in as a private citizen? That's actually what he asks for in this week's Parsha. Couldn't I please just go in, just cross over and see the land? Couldn't you just allow me to do that? But God does not allow even this. And the reason why has nothing to do with hitting the rock. It's because, just as the generation of the spies could not go into the land, so Moses could not as well. The speech that we get here from Moses is a speech informed with 40 years of hindsight. Eicha, how could it be? Lamenting the time that almost without even realizing it, while seeking nothing but respite from the task of judging and teaching an entire nation all alone. Moshe had put the child down when that child had seemed too heavy to carry. This is Rabbi David Foreman.
Is everyone still there? Did I still have everybody?
Yeah.
Yep. It's pretty interesting.
I don't buy it. It's just too complicated. I'm going to tell you what I think. I've always thought this. Even though God tells us what to do and tells us what he's going to do and what he wants to do, he doesn't have to explain himself. And this is the final word, the final chapter. He says, I told you what to do. Whether you do it or not, it's up to you. And Moses told the people what to do. But I told you what. But it's my choice what I decide to do. It's my choice I'm going to let him in or not at the end. It's my choice what I'm going to do, people. It's like the Holocaust. Why would it happen? Well, God let it happen. Who are we to say why? And I think that's the message here, is that at the end, God says, I don't have to explain myself. And just remember, with all these stories and everything else, I am God, and I just don't have to explain. Some things are going to happen, and there's going to be no explanation, and I'm not going to explain them, and that's the way it is. And I think that's the final message here. It's not about the rock. It's not about Moses. Not about the people. He's saying, making it just a session. I've got 1 billion other planets and 1 billion other societies, and I might be like the Supreme Court today. I may not decide to hear it. Just remember that. So that's my take on it.
And as Archie Bunker said, God don't make no mistakes. That's how he got to be God.
Yeah, then again, Sammy
God
Davis
doesn't have to explain. Because just like when you parent. But why, Mom? Because I said so.
Because I said so.
Yeah, that's it. Case closed.
Case closed.
Yeah. There you go. That was a good video, though. It's still interesting. It's an interesting.
Do you pay for that? Do you pay for that video, Mike?
Yeah, it's like a $15 a month subscription, and I don't watch them enough. I mean, I would sometimes watch over the weekends and stuff, just like a few. I mean, there's a couple on there that are just amazing about faith.
How many a month do you get? Like, how do you?
I think there's probably like at least one a week. And it's not just him, too. He has a whole staff of people that teach different things. But the Tisha B'Av one, which was about Rachel's tears, I think I shared that it's a long one. It's like 50 minutes, but it's I don't think it's 5 parts total, 50 minutes, and it's remarkable because he's always doing that with the words. He's always finding these kind of connections between the words and sometimes they go backwards, sometimes they go forwards. It's called something like chiasms or something, where the words work in the same thing. In one of the stories that he always comes back to is the story of Joseph, which is absolutely amazing. It's like all these stories. He did something about the what's the reading on Passover, the Haggadah.
Yeah,
and how. Like he broke that down, and when he broke it down, it was like, wow, this reading's all over the place. And somehow he said it's kind of all about Joseph. It's like, what? Because it's all, I mean, I don't know. You probably are more familiar with it than I, but it was like, how did that happen? But anyway, great night.
As always.
And we're still on board to read Joshua.
Why not?
I think that's great.
I'm down.
I want to go into the promised land with Joshua.
Yeah, I do. But, interesting enough, even though it was great to read the Haftorahs, I think Joshua will be more interesting
Mm.
I mean, every time we read the Torah over and over again, we see something different.
Right.
And the Haftorahs are pretty much have the same theme. But clearly, I'm looking forward to Joshua. And then I think that the following year, I think we need to read the book of Enoch.
Ooh. Ooh.
You want to go into the Apocrypha?
Well, I think so. I think that would be. Have you read the book of Enoch?
No, I haven't. I don't think I've even found a good translation of it, but I'm sure there's one out there. If you have one, let me know and I can put it in my Kindle.
There are a couple of others around. I borrowed one from Rabbi Kudan, who's an expert on the book of
Yeah,
Enoch.
I heard he is.
He was an expert on that. He started his doctorate in that in reading and doing the book of Enoch. He never finished it.
And Ed, what it was specifically in the book of Enoch, what was it that generated his interest?
I don't know what generated his interest in being a rabbi. I don't know. It's what generates interest, but it's bizarre. It's bizarre. I mean, it's read in Ethiopia but it's bizarre about the giants coming down and having sex with humans, and it's just they left it out. It's really not even part of the Apocrypha, is it, Michael?
Yeah, it is.
It's just bizarre, and I did read it, and it's just absolutely bizarre. And I think that the Haftorahs were fun. I think Joshua will be fun. I mean, the book of Ezekiel would be really interesting. But I think we should do something bizarre.
Yeah. I think we could even fit in the book of Ruth with Joshua, because Joshua only has something like 20 something chapters.
Yeah, we could.
Because Ruth is a nice short book.
Yeah, where I go,
Right, right. Is that read on a certain holiday, the book of Ruth?
No.
Purim,
no.
No. What am I saying? Not Purim.
No.
When we read the Megillah.
Michael, what is in your background? What is the background that you have on there? Where is that located?
I think that's Winthrop. Yeah, that's Winthrop. Oh, that's my up above this shoulder here is my car mirror. I thought that was a building, but that's the sunset in Winthrop about a year or two ago. And that's looking out on the other side of Winthrop.